You're listening to the Getting Social podcast, a keep it real type podcast where we discuss entrepreneurship, marketing, and all kinds of social topics. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Getting Social podcast. I am your host, Jeff Policard, and this is episode number 16. If you're a parent and an entrepreneur or marketer, you might want to catch this episode. I have the pleasure of having international speaker, author, coach, wife, and mother, Rhiannon Neuharth on the show. We get to not only learn about her journey as a former teacher, but also as a mother staring adversity right in the face while developing the habits that helped her launch her entrepreneurial career. We will discuss some of those habits that can also help you become a top performer. So without further ado, it's time to get social. All right, so let's get right to it. First of all, thank you so much, Rhiannon, for accepting my offer to be on the Getting Social podcast. I must say this is an exciting episode for me because you help people like myself be the best version of ourselves. So I'm looking forward to what you'll be sharing today on the show. But first of all, let's talk about Rhiannon, the teacher. I often say that when I teach something to someone, I feel like I learn just as much from them and the overall experience as they do themselves. So, as a former middle school life science teacher, what are some of the things you taught your students and what did you learn yourself?
Thanks, Jeff. So it's such an honor to be here tonight with you. I'm super excited because, a lot of people look at teachers as kind of an undervalued part of the community. Mm-hmm. And going into a teaching environment, I originally taught high school. Most recently, a few years ago, I taught middle school science, but I taught high school science first. And when I was interning, basically, if you call it that, as a teacher, my cooperating teacher she was theater trained. And so one of the things she really kind of hit in on me to teach me was reflections and inflections in your voice, things like that, just to connect with people. But it was on the teacher part, right? But as a student, some of the things that I taught them were life skills more than anything. When you're student teaching, you're not getting paid, right? So It was a little bit chaotic. And the part of town I was teaching at was a predominantly Hispanic population. I lived in the community, loved the community. My brother and sister both went to the same high school. They were actually in the high school when my husband and I, that same year when we were student teaching, because my husband is also a teacher. Nice. And what I learned really was the work ethic and the home life of the children and being able to connect to them in different ways outside of the classroom. For example, I had one student and he would often sleep in class. And most of the kids, you would probably write them off as a teacher unless you knew there's right? But what I found out from my cooperating teacher, my mentor, was this kid, his parents both worked at the packing plant and they were laid off. And so he was the sole income provider for his family. And so he worked at night after school. And so he came to school tired. And I would just go over to him and I'd say, hey, I tap him a little bit and I say, hey, bud, I know you're tired. Let's see what we can get done today. And so for me as a teacher, it was, you're going to have those kids you resonate with. You're going to have those kids you butt heads with. But me, it was really getting to know the kids on a more personal level because you could see their smiles. You could see when they're upset. And my kids knew if they had a problem that they could come to me about something. And it was a safe space for them. And that was one of the biggest things, no matter what age level, is just connecting with your kids as much as you can to those ones that are willing to connect with you.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of social skills, especially from that story. There's a lot of social skills involved in education altogether because not every person is going to learn the same way. Not every person has the same story, just like this kid, that was faced with something that most other kids are not faced with, so that's awesome. That's one of the things that I enjoy the most about some of my teachers that until today, I still remember, especially in college. I remember my psychology teacher, professor, there was something about him. He was the reason actually why I took every single psychology class that he taught, because there was something about him. It was more than the subject matter. It was more than, the academic stuff. It was a lot of like who he was and what he's trying to get out of his students. So,
Absolutely.
but thank you for that, because honestly, I think teachers are underappreciated. I mean, it's by millions and millions of miles. Like, I think like this is one of the most important professions, and the most underrated, the most important and the most underrated at the same time. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, considering what we're going through right now, with virtual learning that my son actually is going through right now, and all the challenges that teachers are currently facing in the classrooms, I actually see sometimes like the teacher trying to teach the people that the students that are in the classrooms and those that are also attending via their iPads. How do you see our education system as a whole, and as a former teacher, not only in respect to the pandemic, but also in general, and how our children are learning? Are some of the challenges the reason why you decided to, for example, homeschool your kids?
Jeff, that's a great question. We've been homeschooling off and on since the kids were really little.
Mm-hmm.
We'd always kind of talked about, my husband and I, about traveling the world when the kids got to middle school and just homeschooling and doing whatever. And we moved and realized the educational system here was very subpar. So our kids grew up Montessori, and that type of environment is all student directed. The children lead the facilitation, if you will, of their education. They have the teachers there in the classroom to help give them lessons, but the kids, it's more following the leader of the child. And most education has that backwards, because you're trying to force kids into a box with learning styles. And my son, for example, he's dealt with bullying from not only students, but also teachers. And the kid, he's so smart, but to be told from a teacher, like, your kid has a learning, they didn't even say disability. One did, but I mean, it's like learning difference. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. He just learns the audio and video. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a multiple intelligence. That's like education 101. Like, this kid doesn't have anything wrong with him. He's just an audio visual learner. So we had to find a way for him to not feel test anxiety, because that was a huge thing for him. And we just had to find a program that would work for him. And we've been homeschooling him now consistently the last year and a half. And before that, we did another year. And he's so much better at home, and he's learning so much. And he's only doing school like an hour a day. And he has the rest of the day to do what he wants to, whether that be play or go outside with sister or whatever he wants to do. But the stress part of it is gone. And the only time he has tears is when he's genuinely frustrated. He just needs a brain break, which everybody needs. I don't care how old you are. So the challenge is right now that the educational system, not only in America, but worldwide, with this, issue that we're dealing with online education, but specifically in the States, I'm still in a lot of teacher groups on Facebook, and to see the stress that the teachers are under, and all people in the government are telling them what to do and how to do this. And they're all like just having mental breakdowns themselves, trying to figure out how they're going to meet the needs of their students, how they're going to meet the academic rigor that's required, how they're going to pull all this off while some are, like you said, in-person teaching and digitally teaching, but nobody is paying these teachers more money. And they're now expected to also be a janitor and all this stuff on top of all the other responsibilities that teachers have. And it's just, to me, it's very frustrating. And my husband is also, like I said, a former teacher. And we just look at each other and we're like, thank God we got out of the profession we did, because there is no way with an immune compromised child, either one of us would compromise ourselves or our home to go to a job that's underpaid and underrated, and definitely not worth the stress and the hassle mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, or any of that stuff right now, because it's a mess. But kids just aren't learning. They're not learning the way that they could be and should be, because there's no engagement, because these teachers are expected to do things they've never had a book to teach them how to do themselves. So the guidelines that they're being placed under in some cases, and the kids themselves, I mean, I've heard of kindergarteners, Jeff, that have 6 hours on a computer. That's not academically appropriate for a 6-year-old.
That's my son.
Yeah. And
I agree.
As a parent and as a teacher, to be hearing these things and just feeling bad for the entire situation, and knowing there's nothing else that those can do, but people are just pulling their kids out of the system faster than that you can blink, because they don't want this for their children either.
This is so true. That's my son. Like, he spends exactly 6 hours on the computer on his iPad daily. I mean, I think he enjoys it. I see him, he's engaging
That's good.
a lot, actually, more than I was hoping for in a way. I was like, man, he's very engaged, asking questions, raising his hand, actually many times even like correcting the teacher. No, teacher, that's not what you said yesterday and stuff like that. So I enjoy seeing that, obviously, because I thought that would be one of the downfalls of not being in a classroom and not being able to participate. But he has that. But what I don't like is that he spends, the entire day on the iPad, and even for recess and for pleasure, he enjoys watching YouTube videos and cartoons and movies and educational videos. So it's like screen time is super, super high. That really bothers me. But a couple of things that you said, actually. First, I'm happy for you guys that you got out of the profession. But based from what I'm hearing and what I've read from you, we also lost two great, teachers. So good for you and bad for us. And another thing, you said in homeschooling, your son, right?
Both my children, yeah, my son and my daughter.
Both your children, and you said for 1 hour they have a class.
Yeah, so they're basically it's like an online private school.
Okay.
And the program is more of, I wouldn't say self-paced, but it's like if you want to take the day off or the afternoon off, like tomorrow we're going to go to Disney in the afternoon. Like we have the flexibility of being able to do what we want when we want to and still participate in the program. So there's no like scheduled times you have to meet. It's just all recorded videos. So you have he gets up and both of them get up some days. They're up and already working by the time I get up and out of bed because they're morning birds. I am not. I am 9 hours. But, they are usually done within an hour, hour and a half if they just sit down and focus. Some days, they'll come to me, hey, Mom, can you help me with this? Or, hey, I really struggled with this. I need to retake this test, and it's fine. But they have control over their education again, just like they used to in Montessori, instead of somebody telling them what they have to do every single day, where they have to be, how to sit, how to do all the things. And it was too much. And my daughter's academically inclined. So we have her a grade level ahead. So we pulled her out of the school she had gone into. She went to a private school last year because we were homeschooling her the year before. And she's like, Mom, I just really miss friends. She's very social. So we were like, okay, let's put you back in school. So we put her through our church and she was doing great. She loved it. But then when everything hit the fan with her being immune compromised, we're like, we're going to pull her out. Like, we're just going to homeschool. So we had already, the year before, she had already done the work for second grade and they wouldn't bump her up in the school she was in. So we were like, well, we have control of that. We'll just sign her off being done with second grade. She technically already did that last year. And so we started her at fourth grade level as a third grader in March. And so she's almost done with that and keeping strides up with her brother. He just finished, fourth grade himself by age. And so he just went into fifth grade. So she's keeping a steady pace right next to him as much as she can.
That is so awesome. That fascinates me. I love it. That's something that I'm contemplating. I'm not there.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of the other stuff also, obviously a little bit later, but career wise, you have to have, the time, or I should say the flexibility to be able to do that. But honestly, I spoke to my wife about it a couple of times. I have a friend of mine that he has 4 daughters, and he was telling me that, he's homeschooling them. His wife stays at home, and she does an amazing job doing that. And then that was like, I was like, how does that even work? I honestly, it's completely ignorant on my part, but I didn't even know that was legal. Like, I was like, can you do that? Like, keep your kids at home and educate them? And say, yeah, of course. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that, so that was a couple of years ago. So that's when I started really getting into understanding that process a little bit better. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
But let's fast forward a little bit, because now you're teaching or coaching, if I should say, marketers such as myself, and you're empowering us with consistent daily actions, creating momentum in our business. That's really like one of the main reasons why you're here, because I'm curious to hear about, some of those things, daily actions, and what they include, if you're able to share some of those things with us.
Absolutely. So I have been in network marketing off and on since I was 18 years old. And I am definitely not the same person that I was when I was 18. I've learned, I've had kids since then. I filed bankruptcy once since then.
Wow.
So I've been through the gamut, but I always knew the vision of what the industry of network marketing could do and always believed in that. And I've switched the vehicle a few times, but the principles always stay the same no matter what. And, one of my mentors always says skill set and mindset equals jet set. And it's two of the most important things. Your mindset is the very first thing you have to control if you're going to be self-employed. Mm-hmm. If you are working for somebody else, you have this employee mindset, right? Like somebody's telling you what to do all the time. You have to report. You have to be there for a certain time. You can only take bathroom breaks at a certain time. Ask me, I know I'm a teacher by trade. And you are used to just somebody dictating your schedule all the time. And then if you start your own business, you struggle because you're used to somebody telling you what to do all the time and you have no sense of direction. And so being in this industry, I have seen over and over again the success of what I call the 90-day sprint. And it's just those consistent actions of, if you're going to be marketing on social media, make sure your profile doesn't have spam all over it. Like, not everybody needs to know what product or what company you're with. Like, that's the whole point. You need to create a little bit of curiosity, right? So setting up your profile, how to post, how to talk to people, how to meet new people on social media. I have built successful businesses through social media because of the relationships I've built just by meeting new friends online. And some of my best friends I've never met in person. How crazy is that? I've met them all online. So those consistent daily actions include just things of mindset, like getting up every day and doing a Tony Robbins priming exercise. Just something as simple as that gets your mind going for the day and gets your intentions focused on what you should be doing. Then I also teach them about time management. We all have the same 24 hours in the day. It's how you use it and how focused you are with the time that you have. So what I like to teach too is the 6 most important things to do list. So some of these things are on my YouTube channel, so anybody's welcome to check that stuff out. But those consistent daily actions, that program is just kind of a compound effect for those online marketers that have never been doing this before. They don't know what they're doing and they need someone to tell them what to do because they just have no sense of direction.
Yeah. And also, there's one thing I could add to that. I think being an online marketer myself also, there's a level of creativity that this profession, this career brings, or at least you should bring to the career. And I think because of that, the discipline and a lot of the things that you mentioned, the to-do list, that's something that I've been working on for a while. That's one of the things I think a lot of people struggle with. So that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of those tips on my social media, just on my my YouTube channel. I've released a few of those, but a lot of it too is gathering some of my mentors and the things that they teach from their stuff and just utilizing that as a tool to help people. Because I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, you can't profit in your own country, but sometimes people just don't listen to you because your voice gets drowned out, right? Like they hear from you all the time. So they take you for granted. And it's just kind of like, I'm not the listener. Like last time she told me this and then, you know what I mean? Like people just do that. And so it just helps to bring those in and kind of see a different people's point of view so that I'm not just the talking head. It's, hey, here's this guy over here and Rhiannon's been working with him and she said this the other day, but he's emphasizing what she said, So having that, and, for me on Sundays, that's my plan day. So I don't know if that's just the teacher in me, but every single thing every week on Sundays, I plan. And you'd mentioned a calendar. So when I was teaching, I had every single quarter, I would print off blank calendar view, right? And I would write down every single day what the topic was that we were going to be covering. So if my students were gone, they could go back to the calendar and they knew exactly what they missed and what they would need to make up. And so I kind of run that same philosophy every single Sunday. I open my planner and I write down physically. So it's not just digital because I need that paper and pen thing. Use a digital. So I color code things and I write things down and it's just an at a glance thing that I can look at and be like, okay, here's my 6 list. Here's my day. Where can I marry these two together? And, trying to juggle book launches and, podcasts and speaking engagements and my own business and kids and homeschool and all of the things, right? It can get chaotic and messy, but it's really good to unplug sometimes. And one of the things my mentor has told me recently is he's like, my Sundays are my day off And he's like, Mondays, I have to work an extra like hour to have my one day off a week. He's like, but it's worth it for my sanity. And I'm rested and renewed every single time. And he's like, but the only way for me to actually take the day off is I have to log out of all my apps. And it got me thinking, how often do people actually log out of their apps? I don't. It's just always there, right? Like it's easy, just boop, somebody messaged me, got to check it, right? Because you're a little bubble. I don't know if you're like me, but anytime there's that little red bubble, I'm like, curse you, red bubble.
Yeah, so, it bothers me. Yeah, I know.
So you just click on it when you should be paying attention to something else because, your focus is lost and whatever. So I'm going to start like when I do a morning power hour with my team 5 days a week. So after I'm done with some of those things, I'm now logging out of those things until I can go back and have the time to spin and focus on, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes responding to messages. Boom. I'm going to spend 15 minutes over here posting and engaging over here, whatever that may look like. So I really liked that when he covered that with me recently. And then the other tip, just for calendar wise, is to set your schedule every 30 minutes. And I have it in here, like I even have sleep. I have workout because I know if I don't put my run on the calendar, I won't run.
Wow. Yeah, that's important.
Everything that you do from having lunch to family time to all that stuff, schedule it because you're going to be more intentional with your time. And I will tell you, I'm not 100% great at some of these things. Sometimes I get distracted and I have a big project I'm working on, or, people are messaging me or whatever. That's, it's that self-discipline we all have to constantly work on. But those are some things that I've gotten from my mentor recently that I was like, man, these are really good. I got to share them.
There's something, you said you schedule your runs and you schedule your sleep time. And you also mentioned color coding. Yeah. I think I do the same thing also. I put all these things in blue. When I say I do, I write them down. I don't do them as often as I would want to.
One of the biggest takeaways is to make your calendar your boss. Don't make your calendar a negotiable thing. Like if you have scheduled that you're going to go work out, I don't care if you feel like it. Like last night, I ran at 11 o'clock because that's when I had time to do it. And it was one of those days, like it's twice in the last 2 weeks. And I'm like, you know what? I'm on a winning streak and I am not missing my run. I haven't missed one since I've started like 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. And I haven't always been able to meet my goal of like, because I'm doing the 10K app. So, the intervals and all that stuff. So some days you run it through and you're like, yeah, and other days you're not. So you do it again another day, but at least you made the effort and did what you said you were going to do and held yourself accountable to that. So make the calendar your boss. Sleeping, eating, snacks, family time. I do blue for my family, which is funny when you said that. Purple's my me time. Work is green. And yeah, so however you wanted to do those things, obviously, but I'm very visual. So color coding is key for me.
It's important. It's important. And you also want to know also when you look at the calendar, what it looks like. I think that's an obvious answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So is green for money for the work?
It is.
Nice.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you've heard, but we are living in a completely different world. Since March, there's this thing that's been going on, a pandemic, and we've been adapting to it. It's been 8 months, 9 months, but obviously it's changing everything. Now, are your coaching methods, your daily actions, like we spoke about, a few minutes ago, are those also adapting and changing, or are they pretty much the same and can be applied the same?
I'm really blessed the fact that I got out of teaching, one, when I did, and two, the fact that I was coaching or being coached with social media and marketing for so long before this. So for a lot of people, the environment that's in is a whole new terrain for them to try to conquer because they've never done either online marketing. They've never done anything online. They don't know how to use technology in ways that, I've learned because it's funny. People come to me and they're like, you just know everything. You've set up systems and you do this and you can do that. And I don't know how you do it. I would lose my mind. And I'm like, well, I Google it and I push buttons. Like that's my secret. If you want to figure something out, you got to figure it out by doing it. Right. So for me, I haven't had any change for those systems as far as it goes with the sprint. I haven't had to change anything really because those 90-day sprints I was doing personally in my business before I started marketing it. And the only reason I started to market it recently was because I had like a group of a whole bunch of sidelines that I invited to do it. And I was like, hey, let's just do something fun leading up to our big convention. Like, everybody, let's do this. So we just did a short 60-day one to lead up to the big event. And everyone's like, Rhiannon, you need to market this. I have worked with some of the biggest names in this industry, and this is the only thing I've ever done that's made me be accountable to myself and those actions and doing the work, not just somebody talking at me and then me trying to figure out what I should do next. So that's kind of how that came to be. But in that process, I like I said, I start with mindset, start with learning how to do the calendar and how to schedule your time and how to tweak your profile. So that way, if they are new to online marketing, then it's an easier transition in the chaos of the world instead of just like, hey, here's some product. Good luck. Have fun selling it. Like that's not how this works. So for me personally, I haven't had to change or adapt much. For the program, haven't really either. There's just not much. Like, I'll have a challenge of go find a vendor event and, go out and meet some people. Well, clearly we're not all out. Some of us are still quarantining, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody has vendor events right now, or if they are, they're doing them online. So it's just a different approach with the same principle.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? I think in that case, it probably speaks to the strength of those actions and the whole process. That means that it basically applies to almost any situation. But it also, the fact that you're working from home, especially with kids, you have to be more disciplined. That's the other side of the coin. They say that it takes 90 days to create, well, not to create it, I guess to implement a habit or to keep a habit.
Right.
Is that part of the thinking behind it? Can you tell us a little bit more about what the 90-day sprint is about?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been doing this with my previous businesses. So when I first started in network marketing, I was 18, had no idea what I was doing. I did it mostly just to get a discount. Came back a couple of years later and was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And that's when I really started getting serious about like, okay, I need to talk to people, but I kind of hate people. Like, mm-hmm. So how do I go about being me and still doing the things, right? So I had a great mentor. She brought me out. I grew, became a leader in that company, and a short time after the second time I joined, and was able then to have a car, have a title, all those things, but I didn't have the financial piece of that, unfortunately. So I ended up filing bankruptcy after that. I swore off the industry and was like, nope, never again. And you know how God goes, ha ha ha, don't say never. So a few years later is when I came back. And that's when I was really introduced to the 90-day concept through that company and through the leadership team there. And I just really liked it. And so there was a point in my life when my daughter, she was chronically ill. Like I said earlier, she was born missing part of her immune system. And so she was sick all the time, about every 4 to 6 weeks for 2 weeks at a time. And teaching and having a small child that's chronically ill, no sick days, screaming up all night in pain, it was exhausting visually, mentally, emotionally, financially, like all the ways. And so I had joined a business, that second business that I had started not long after I started teaching, like in that school year. And it got to the point where I had to pick between my daughter and putting food on the table. And the mom guilt that I had from that was atrocious. Like, I had to miss one of her surgeries because I had to be at work because I couldn't financially afford to take another day. Oh, wow. And that still get goosebumps to this day about how angry that makes me, that the situation that I was in and that my boss didn't care enough to just be like, hey, well, we understand, go take care of it type of thing. Wow. But that really fueled me. That fueled me because she told me at that time, go sell that thing. And I was like, oh, you watch, woman, I'm going to go sell that thing. And so for 90 days after that, so I'd started, and this was probably about 90 days in is when she came to me and was just like, go do that then, whatever. And so then that, like within 90 days, I had was able to reach another top level in the company, was able to reach a goal of making over $4,000 a month with my business from home, with a sick baby on my lap, having the flexibility to be up at 2:00 in the morning, messaging while I was holding her so she could sleep, doing the things I needed to do and putting my priorities in order. So my family came first and not a paycheck. And so that's where that concept was introduced to me. And that sacrifice that I had made of the lack of sleep and the extreme discipline and the consistency that I had to have in order to get out of the situation I was in so I could be home with her where I needed to be, not just at a job that didn't care about me or my family. So from there, it's kind of where it was born. And so then I would just keep doing those with my team. And then eventually we moved to Florida, which we're here in Orlando. So we came here for her health, and the weather is just much better for her. She's healthier now than she's ever been. But then I started with another company several years ago, and it was about 3 years ago now. And I did 90 days back to back to back to back for a full year and became a $500,000 industry earner from just doing that. So I know that the 90-day push works when you focus and you are disciplined to do it, but not everybody's going to take the time to be as serious and have the situation that I was in originally, that it was do or die, sink or swim. Like, I have to make it work because I don't have another option, you know? Wow.
That's inspiring. I mean, that in itself, it's inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. And that's something that, you know, man, as parents, you know, there's so many things, you know, that we're faced with. Just hearing that, you know, you said you had goosebumps, you know, from the memories. I had goosebumps just hearing about it. You know, it's I was in a situation where, you know, I started my business right before my son was born, and I remember that my wife actually had to go to work. She was actually back in the office 4 weeks after giving birth, which I think is insane. But
yep.
Right? It's crazy. Why? Like, how? Anyway, that's another topic, but that's insane to me. You know, that, you know, a mother, you know, gives birth to a child, and then you separate that mother and that child after 4 weeks, basically, I guess, by law, and you have to go back to work. And what happened is, because I had just started my business, I was more flexible with my time. So I ended up staying home with my son for the first 6 months until we were able to put him in daycare, basically. Yeah. So that was challenging for me, but also that's something that I will never want to give back and take back, because it made me so much closer to my son. It made me appreciate so much more what women do on a daily basis, and the importance of at least the bonding from parent to child. You know, it's something. And I remember I used to be on calls sometimes, and my son was crying in the other room, and I had to close the door for 5-10 minutes, and then rush inside, or put the phone on mute and rush inside quickly, and maybe put his pacifier back, or you know, just show my face for a little bit so he can, you know, feel a little bit better, and then I rush back out and be on the call. And I remember all those moments, and I think that's really what made me appreciate a lot more parenting, and also why it's so important to give that time to your kids, and help them, because that's so important. You know, a child's upbringing, for me, like the first 3 years, you know, and how involved a parent is, and that's one of the problems I think with America. We're so overworked, and we're so, you know, with that capitalistic approach, that it's very difficult, and then it impacts society in a negative way, because those kids don't have that earlier on, and it's important, you know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We go into a little bit more about that too, in one of the books it should be in print here in the next 6 weeks. So.
Oh, for real? Oh, good. Well, you got at the very absolute least one client, one customer.
Pre-order it now on my website. So both of them, actually, there's two, but that'll be the first launch. Will be the network marketing success secrets from top earners. It's called Your Success Blueprint. So.
Nice, very good. But speaking of the 90-day sprint and I guess momentum, it's a word and concept that seems to pop up a lot around you. You know, what can we expect? You know, basically, if you were to summarize, I don't know if you know blank, but if you were to blanket, what would we expect from those books?
So the one I just mentioned, that book is a collaborative book, and it is just a bunch of top earners. Not just, like just a few of us, but it's a group of us top earners that have gotten together to share things that have helped us to be successful. So my story is in the chapter that I was just mentioning about the struggle with my daughter and everything, because I think that a lot of people see you in your chapter 20, but they don't see you at chapter 1. So they're coming in to an opportunity, to a business, to a situation, and they're comparing where they are to where you are now, not realizing the struggle you had before and where you came from. And the fact that they're trying to compare, well, I'm in a struggle, she didn't struggle. Well, they don't know that you had a struggle because they weren't there when you were there, So I really, in that book, focus on the activities that I did, such as those vendor events, such as working, such as doing, 5 to 10 appointments every weekend, a power hour every day. Like, it's just really the actionable things in that book that I did to get out of the situation I was in and to be able to reach my goals and to do the things that I needed to do. So that's what that book is. But there's a lot of other topics in there, like taprooting and a few other things. So if anybody wants more information on that, I can give you that, or I can give you that, Jeff, and you can put it on your stuff there when you put it up. But the Momentum Makers book, that's a series of 100 authors that have come together with Jordan Adler. And if you are in network marketing, you probably have heard of Jordan Adler. He's the author of Beach Money and Beyond Beach Money. And he's a great guy, very nice. We met last year at GoPro, and he ended up coming to a mastermind that I was at in May. In the midst of all this craziness, we all had a mastermind together. And we have put this series together, and then each book in the series has a different topic. So it's all about creating momentum in your business through different things. So there's a book that I'm in for that one on leadership. So that's about 5 different topics of things, of lessons in leadership, if you will, of things to do and things I've experienced that probably you shouldn't do. That's what those 2 books are about. Momentum Makers, I don't have a release date on that one yet. There's been some delays with obviously the series being so large and printing and all that stuff and release dates, but I will have a link for that available here soon to be able to start doing that. But you can pre-order both of those on my website right now.
Awesome. Speaking of that, I will put all that stuff obviously in the notes. Let us know what's the best way to reach you. Anybody that's listening now, any marketer, any professional that needs, a lot of the things that we spoke about now to take their business to the next level, to take their lives, their careers to the next level, because that's really, really where it starts. And you've done it. That's the thing. That's what's so important. You've done it and you're on your way. And how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so I've got my business page on Facebook. It's just at Coach Rhiannon, or my name, Rhiannon Neuharth. So you can find me on there. That's where I keep my personal coaching stuff. So if you find me on my personal Facebook, you will not see any of that stuff there. That's mostly on my actual business page. So that information is there. But you can also go to rhiannonneuharth.com. You can pre-order the books there. You can kind of see some of my experience, different speaking engagements that I've been, coaches that I've partnered with, for mentors for myself, for my team. And if you have any inquiries or anything like that, you can just do info@rhiannonneuharth.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rhiannon. It was a pleasure to have you here at the Getting Social podcast. Thank you for sharing your story, your amazing story. And I hope we can do a recap at some point in 2021 and talk about all the great things that you're doing.
Absolutely. It's been an honor to be here with you, Jeff, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the night.
You as well.
Thank you for listening to the Getting Social podcast. If you've made it that far, it means you probably liked it. In that case, leave us a review, subscribe, and please share it with a friend.